Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. Welcome back to another Doctor Who review on the Host Productions. In today's review, it's going to be a little bit different to usual, as we're going to be doing a 2-in-1 review, taking a look at a brand new Big Finish audio drama, but also doing a product review as well. As I'm going to be taking a look at the delayed Doctor Who Time Lord Victorious release, which is of course Echoes of Extinction, as written by Alfie Shaw, featuring David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, but also, rather excitingly, Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor. So this release is available to order now on the Big Finish website as a download for £8.99, and then we also have this vinyl record release as well, which I do believe is limited edition to 1,000 pressings and is now sold out on the Big Finish website. A number of stock was also available to order on Amazon a number of weeks ago, however that now seems to be sold out. It does seem to come back in every so often, however is a little bit unreliable, so it seems that the only place that you can now get stock of this release is in fact on third-party retailers the likes of eBay. So sadly, if you really want to listen to this story, the download is going to be the best bet from this point onwards. However, if you are looking to track down the record, I wish you the best of luck. I do believe the recommended retail price is around £20. So the first half of this review is going to be taking a look at the actual product itself, and the second we shall return to the Big Finish review format and take a look at the actual story. And something to also note, because I know a number of Big Finish listeners were wondering this, are we going to see a CD release of this story at some point? As it currently stands, no, because this release was in fact made and contracted to the Demon Music Group, who do in fact release the Doctor Who vinyl records, a number of which I have already reviewed on this channel in the past. So this is a story that was made for the record format. However, due to it being produced by Big Finish themselves, they basically own the rights to the material or something like that, so they are allowed to release a download version of the story. However, a CD version of it is looking unlikely for the future. Now, one of the interesting things about this release is that it is of course a part of the Time Lord Victorious brand of merchandise, which did of course get released in late 2020 into early 2021, which basically was a multi-platform Doctor Who story arc from comics, books, audio dramas, much more. Originally I intended on reviewing the Big Finish contributions to the series, however I then realised that I needed time in my life to eat and sleep, and I was already reviewing a lot of Big Finish as it is around that time, so I haven't really listened to anything from Time Lord Victorious. I listened to one story, I never reviewed it because I never got time, meaning that this review is going to be interesting because from what I understand Time Lord Victorious, you can read or experience any of this media as a singular story without needing the overarching elements of the rest of the stuff, so each release is independent and can be enjoyed in its own right. So in today's review we're going to be finding out if that is indeed the case, because I imagine that due to this episode being a multi-Doctor story with David Tennant and Paul McGann, it's going to have possibly more interest than some of the other Time Lord Victorious releases, so time to find out if it actually makes sense. The cover art for Echoes of Extinction is wonderfully created by Lee Binding, an expert in making very pretty things. This is really shown off through the presentation on the record sleeve. The record comes wrapped in cellophane with a sticker on top, stating the usual company details, the story synopsis, and mentioning that this is a limited edition 140-gram vinyl record release from the Demon Music Group. The first of the two covers represents the second half of the story, located on the destroyed landscape of the planet Oriv, with the Doctor and TARDIS in the centre, accompanied by Joshi and Cook, the assistants of the expedition, played by two very familiar actors to the Whoniverse, being Mina Anwar and Arthur Darvill. Surrounding them is a lovely pink and purple celestial design with fireballs raining down. Flipping around to the opposite side, we have the second front cover representing the first half of the story, featuring the brilliant Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, alongside his era-specific TARDIS exterior design, mirroring the style of the 10th Doctor cover. This time the colour palette uses a lovely blue and green. Off towards the side we have the suggestion of some spacecraft corridors, as well as Edwards the servant robot, played by the excellent Paul Clayton, who is also known from the Torchwood Aliens Among Us series. And towards the opposite side we have the foe of the story being the Network. Both covers feature your usual cast text, the Big Finish and BBC logos, as well as the Time Lord Victorious banner towards the bottom. The inner sleeve of the record features the production credits on one side with a blue background, and the other the casting credits with a red background. There is also a rectangle present towards the bottom, which would contain the unique identification number, although this isn't present on my version due to it being a press sample. The vinyl record is a stunning and rather unusual design, being split in half, a nod to the fact that this story is split across two Doctors' timelines, using a very vibrant red and blue finish. Once more, the Demon Music Group have created another rather special vinyl design, and it's a treat to have yet another Big Finish story pressed onto record. Okay, so I am back, having just listened to Echoes of Extinction, and I am happy to report that I understood the story, albeit there are certain aspects of the plot which I wasn't able to fully appreciate, having not listened to or experienced the other Time Lord Victorious pieces of media. It is definitely a story that you can understand in its own right, however something of which that I would like to establish immediately, and something of which that is very clear having listened to the story. However, I kind of still went in expecting something different. This is a multi-Doctor story, or at least it's a multi-Doctor release. It's not a story where you're going to get interaction between the two different Doctors, because this episode, as the actual record suggests, is split in two. So you basically have a half-an-hour episode with Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, and then the conclusion of the story with the remaining half-an-hour within the 10th Doctor era, so you have their theme tunes from their eras being used to represent the different halves, and as a result you do kind of have overlap with the two stories where there is a few little links, but I'm going to avoid that with spoilers. But I will say, because I think it is only fair to say this, you're not going to get any actual interaction properly between the 10th and 8th Doctors, which I think is okay. It doesn't have to be a multi-Doctor story, and let's face it, if you want the 10th Doctor meeting classic incarnations of the Doctor, you've got 3 releases coming very soon. You've got Out of Time 1, 2 and 3, with of course Peter Davison, Tom Baker and Colin Baker coming in 2022. So what is the Echoes of Extinction about? Well, I'm going to avoid the main details of the story in order for you to fully appreciate it yourselves, because this is only a 1-hour episode, but it is basically an episode that details the aftershocks, I think, of the Doctor's adventures. So you have the 8th Doctor introducing the story. He is on a spaceship where you have this butler called Edwards, and he is basically looking after this other character called Jasmine, and Jasmine is rather scared because she believes that she is going to get tracked down and killed by this certain source of energy, because the rest of her species on the planet below has been destroyed. And for the most part of the story, the 8th Doctor is trying to work out what is going on. He's been thrown into this situation, and basically it's an action-packed story, although admittedly at points I was starting to think, what is going on here? I'm a little bit confused, which I was quite surprised, given that this is a story from the Time Lord Victorious range, and I thought that it was a series that's meant to be for beginners. I think it may have just been that I missed a few lines here and there and forgot a little bit of the narrative. However, there were a few aspects of the story that I did find ever so slightly confusing, but the context of part 2 kind of brought it all together in order to make me fully understand the story overall. But I think that Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor actually did a very good job, and I think that if you are looking to get into Big Finish, Paul McGann is a very safe option, because he is a Doctor that is very much the mid-ground between classic series and new series Doctor Who. Of course, the vast majority of his era is on Big Finish, so as a result the Big Finish writers have got very used to writing for this incarnation. I just think that overall Paul McGann is a very welcoming Doctor to listen to. He's very easy to follow. Paul McGann has some excellent lines throughout this story, but equally he has command. He's adventurous, and he's a Doctor that's very gripping to listen to. So the second part will basically continue the story. So we have the spaceship up in orbit that the 8th Doctor is on for the first half, and then we go down onto the planet below, being the planet of Oriv, where basically the species that was in the previous episode has been wiped out from. So we have this escape craft within the first story, and now we go onto the key focus of the planet itself, where we have this expedition that has been sent. We have Captain Fry as the lead, along with all of her assistants being Joshi and Cook. and basically they are on a mission to find the energy source because they have a contract that has been established. Basically, if they can contain the energy source that has admittedly wiped out a planet of millions of people, they can flog it on to another species for an extensive amount of money. As a result, they get rich, but also at the same time, within the contract there is an exclusion clause, meaning that the people that have been sold the weapon can't use the weapon against the people that they've bought it off, kind of as a little bit of reassurance. Very much like the first story, I think that the 10th Doctor has some excellent moments throughout this episode. He's quite funny and quirky to start with as soon as you start the episode and he starts interacting with the expedition team. He's just having a lot of fun. I think at this point, and it may also be confirmed within the upcoming Dalek Universe stories, I think that David Tennant is getting very used to the audio drama format, and I actually think that recording in lockdown may have benefited his Doctor because he's certainly getting used to the audio drama environment, and I just hope that that continues into the Dalek Universe series as well. But equally, I think that Alfie Shaw actually has quite a lot of credit for this story because I think that both of the Doctors are written very well. It's very clear that their approaches to the story are different. The 8th Doctor is a bit more reserved at points, however still has that adventurous nature that the 10th Doctor has, and overall I find them both rather enjoyable to listen to. And I kind of like the way that this story, say for example, you see the Doctor coming across an android, and that android was previously relevant within the 8th Doctor story, so you kind of see the aftershocks of the 8th Doctor adventure and the repercussions of that within the 10th Doctor story, and vice versa a little bit as well. You kind of have it coming from the future and the past at the same time. At the very end of the story, we do have the Doctor relating to a certain species, which he does name drop on a number of occasions, a species that I'm a little bit unaware of, which makes me think that it's linking into the wider Time Lord Victorious stuff. So in conclusion, for Echoes of Extinction, as written by Alfie Shaw, featuring the 10th and 8th Doctors, it's a decent story. It's got some entertaining moments, and it is quite a spacey episode dealing with space weapons and basically a massive threat on the universe, and I think that the foe of the story being the network, this rather mysterious artificial intelligence, is also a very worthy threat. We get a number of deaths throughout this story that I wasn't quite expecting, and then it does surprise me. It's a pleasantly interesting story that does have a few complex moments in there as well, which, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this review, I was rather surprised by, because I've always assumed that Time Lord Victorious was aimed at those people who haven't necessarily delved Doctor Who media beyond the actual TV show itself, so an introduction into the books, an introduction into Big Finish. But overall, for a story, I think it's decent, and if you're looking to get the vinyl, or if you have the opportunity to get the record for a decent price, I most certainly recommend doing so, because at the end of the day, even if you haven't listened or experienced the other Time Lord Victorious content at this point, you can of course go back in the future and purchase that merchandise. So if you have the opportunity to get the record and you are a fan of Doctor Who vinyls, it doesn't take an expert to work out, I recommend buying that, because I imagine it is going to go up in price in the future as it gets more and more sought after by collectors after selling out very, very quickly. But for those of you that have listened to the other Time Lord Victorious media and want to experience this story, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this review, the download is available via the Big Finish website for £8.99. And finally, for this review, I am quite curious how many of you watching this review has actually experienced Time Lord Victorious. Have you been cherry-picking certain bits of media that interest you? Have you only been experiencing certain stuff, the likes of the Big Finish content, or just the books? I'm interested to know, because it seems to be one of those series where I've heard quite a lot about it, however nothing specifically relating to the different releases, so I'm quite curious to see how many people have followed it all the way through. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week, from Big Finish audio drama reviews, book reviews, product reviews, and of course much, much more. Have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.